everyone, I am Abby, as you may or may not know, and as you also may or may not know, I am an avid video essay watcher on YouTube. Oftentimes, the time I spend on YouTube is spent watching video essays, specifically ones related to the film industry. I love watching movie reviews, even if they're like reviews of movies I haven't seen, or like rankings of movies I haven't seen. So because I spend a lot of time watching video essays specifically about the film industry, I feel like I've heard quite a bit, or at least quite a bit of people's opinions on that time a few years ago when Disney bought Fox. But what aggravates me about this topic of conversation in video essays is that most of the time it is pointed at how Disney shut down Blue Sky Studios, why did my brain blank on that, and made a really bad Ice Age spin-off kind of movie called The Adventures of Buck Wild. I've seen quite a few reviews of The Adventures of Buck Wild because, of course, it's a bad movie, and people like to review bad movies. But what aggravates me about this is not the fact that people are talking about it, but the fact that people have talked about it so much that they also forget that Disney decided to destroy another Fox property after acquiring Fox's properties, and that is the Night at the Museum franchise, one of my favorite movie franchises of all time. So yeah, you guys might not remember this or have known this at all, but after acquiring Fox's properties, Disney animated and released a Night at the Museum movie onto Disney+. It's called Night at the Museum, Kahmunrah Rises Again, and from my memory, it's kind of bad. I can definitely remember that it's very inaccurate. Even the character designs don't look that much like the original characters, which I can understand since you're animating it. You don't really want to make the animated versions look exactly like the actors, but like, it was really inaccurate, especially lore-wise. I know a lot about the Night at the Museum lore. I have made an hour-and-a-half long video yapping about Night at the Museum. If you want to, you can check that out. But today, I would like to revisit Night at the Museum, Kahmunrah Rises Again, and decide if these days I think it's actually bad in quality and not just bad because it's inaccurate to the original series. So, I'm going to be recording myself watching this. I'll be taking notes while watching the movie, notes of every last inaccuracy to the original lore, as well as notes on whether I think the movie is good or not. Like, if I see something that's bad, I'll be like, this is kind of bad. If I see something that's good, I'll be like, this is kind of good. And, you know, I'll just keep track of that and come out with a review and, of course, a talk about all the inaccuracies, a list of all the inaccuracies of the movie. So, let's get into it. Let's start watching Night at the Museum, Kahmunrah Rises Again. So, it's actually been a couple hours since I filmed that intro. I'm about to start watching the movie. I just saw the description, like I'm in Disney+. I see the description. The description is just an all-new animated adventure based on the popular film franchise. I guess the fact that it says based on is better, but they're still using the same characters and making it completely inaccurate, so it still makes me mad. But anyway, here we go. Let's hope my camera does not randomly turn off because I don't have enough storage space mid-movie. Also, by the way, I'm gonna be analyzing the soundtrack as well. Adding the Disney thing? This feels wrong! Okay, they still have the theme. Why is Attila that buff? How did Joan of Arc get there? Why does Law look like that? Why does Dexter look like that? Ew! Why does Jedediah look like that? Everybody, I'm asking why they look like that. What the what? Oh wait, I forgot to get my notebook! Teddy has no- where's Texas? Teddy has no horse! I'm trying to curb my bias here, but this is killing me. The soundtrack composer, I love him so much. I appreciate this man. I don't know who he is, really.
Sorry, Larry, but he wasn't a good fit for us.
How do you know? You didn't give him time!
Tablet is missing! Technically, he's not a pharaoh. He was passed over for his younger brother because he's an unstable tyrant.
Where's the aforementioned younger brother? Do they just not let him out? Because his sarcophagus is there.
And oh, by the way, I unleashed an ancient god. I'm not my dad. I'm not a hero like him or you guys.
Nick, you have your own gifts that make you strong.
Should I write down anything about how, Kahmunrah's minions aren't bird people? It's almost over, guys.
The name's Nick Daly, and I'm the new Night Guard.
Was that supposed to be like the second movie where Kahmunrah's like, "Who are you?" and Larry's like, "I'm the Night Guard," and then yeets him into the portal? Because it didn't work. It didn't work. Oh, that hurt. Oh. Produced by Sean Levy? What? He approved of this? Okay, it is the next day. I had to film this part the next day after I watched the movie because I had to stop filming as soon as I finished the movie because I have a limited amount of screen time I'm allowed to have. So now I am finishing up the video. I'm gonna give my review on the quality of the movie overall, trying to disconnect it too, but kind of somewhat compare it to the original trilogy. And then I'm going to give my review on the accuracy. I'm gonna try to come up with a rating. I didn't come up with a rating yesterday when I organized all the notes that I took mid-movie into something that would make sense. Let's just get on to, let's just do the general review. So I'm starting with the good stuff. Why do I keep doing this? I need to stop doing that. Yeah, let's start with the good stuff. The animation is not bad, which is kind of a given for Disney, except for the case of, the abomination that was The Adventures of Buck Wild. But most of the time, it's, like, kind of the lowest, or a lower bar for Disney to have good animation when they're putting out random lower budget stuff like this. The fight scene at the end specifically was pretty cool. And it the fight scene at the end was cool. It looked pretty good. And yeah. Oh yeah, it was fairly well modernized. Like, they made all the aspects of the franchise more modern. Like, it wasn't like shoving phones or memes in our faces or anything. They just, you know, Nick, being a high schooler, had a phone. The people in high school were chill and, like, actual high schoolers these days, I think. You know, it wasn't a terrible depiction of modern day stuff. Number 3, this isn't particularly a good thing. This is just something random that I noticed when I was watching the movie. Kahmunrah broke the fourth wall in a way. It's like a lower level breaking the fourth wall than literally looking into the camera and saying something to the viewers. But, he was, like, being chased around by Rexy, the T-Rex skeleton, and he was trying to eat him, and, Kahmunrah's just like, "Don't eat me, or it would be a really short movie!"
No, don't eat me, or it'll be a real short movie.
And I was just like, Guh? Like, what? Why would they make him say that? That's so, like, so strange. The original Night at the Museum trilogy never broke the fourth wall with their comedy. And now on to the bad stuff for this movie. And this is just some random stuff I thought of while I was watching the movie that's like, that's not very good. So the first thing is the writing is obvious. Like, this is kind of, I feel like that was like the most obvious thing I could have said about a movie like this. The writing is obvious, and by what I mean by that is basically everything is shoved into our faces. There were several times where they literally would say something like, we have to stop Kahmunrah we have to stop Kahmunrah from enacting his plan or else we're gonna turn to dust. They would not stop talking about how they were gonna turn to dust and how Kahmunrah was gonna take over the world and everything, and it kind of drove me crazy. I was like, how many times do we need to say it? Leave things up for people to remember. The original trilogy was not baby movies. This is like a baby movie, because how many times do you have to repeat the same thing? Also, this is another part of it. There was this one character, his name was Seth. He was like supposed to be the Egyptian god of chaos or something. And I don't know if it was supposed to be his thing, like a comedic kind of like main aspect of his personality or his character that he did, but literally he always would explain the irony or comedy of a moment. There was this one part, this is kind of spoilers, but I don't think anybody's gonna want to see this movie after this review. Nick tricked him into using his laser eyes, yes, he has laser eyes, to shoot at a pillar in the temple they were in, and the pillar fell onto, like, almost onto Seth, and he jumped away and landed in this ravine kind of thing, this crack in the ground that had opened, and he was, like, hanging there by his, whatever the heck you'd call his outfit. Probably a tunic, but yeah, and then he was, like, taken down by my own powers, who knew, or something stupid like that.
Flashback.
I used my god powers to defeat myself? Who could have seen that coming?
Ah!
End of flashback.
And then there was another time when, like, Kahmunrah was fighting Nick. Nick did something that, like, hurt Kahmunrah in some way, and Seth just, like, re-explained exactly what happened when he did that. He was like, something, and he kicked you right in the face or something. I'm like, well, yeah, Seth, we just saw it. Why are you yapping? That made me really mad. Also, in the very beginning of the movie, they had a Night Guard manual written on the front of the Night Guard manual. Let's get to some more stuff. This is also related to the writing, I'd say. The humor was very low bar. Like, there was a lot of slapstick stuff every once in a while. You probably saw this, I probably will make sure to edit this part in, but there was, like, a whip crack moment? Like, they had a whip crack sound effect at one moment. I was like, why is that there?
Oh no! We got you, Nick.
Why was there a whip crack? That's not really comedy, though. There was one time I was just talking about how Seth ended up hanging in the ravine by his tunic. They played a fart noise when he did that, but also, like, the jokes are, like, really stupid. They're not as clever, I guess. And a lot of the time, Night at the Museum didn't really have... I mean, it did have jokes, but I feel like a lot of the time, the joke or the comedy of the moment was that the moment was awkward. But this one, they're trying to make it, like, silly and whatever, and, like, it's really annoying. I can't think of a specific example, unlike my last comment, but, yeah, no, the comedy was not good, which is something you want to try to get in a Night at the Museum movie, you know? And then the next thing is, yeah, near the end, they tried to shove in a sad moment where the characters thought they were gonna die because it had turned sunrise, almost, and, like, they were turning to dust. But I felt like it was very silly. Like, after the climax where Nick defeats Kahmunrah, they tried to shove in this sad moment of everybody thinking they're gonna die, and it didn't have the same kind of emotion that the original 3 movies had either. It was just like, oh well, I guess we're gonna die. But I'm happy to have had friends like you guys. And then they do like a group hug. And Nick's like, I'm sorry, guys. I couldn't help you guys and whatever. Then, oh my gosh. It made me mad. Editing Abby here, I just wanted to kind of elaborate on what I meant by saying that it didn't have the same emotion as the original trilogy. In the original trilogy, every emotion, especially the sad emotions, were expressed not through words like in Kahmunrah Rises Again, but rather through actions and through the power of showing, not telling. The score, being sad and sounding sad, would tell you that the moment is sad. The way the actors acted would tell you that it was sad, and they didn't have to say anything about how they were sad or why they were sad. They just acted, you know? And it felt so much more natural than being like, I'm sorry guys, I couldn't help you. And they're like, it's okay, because we had each other the whole time. Group hug! They didn't have to group hug. They never had to group hug, because you can see through the acting that they loved each other. I swear, I did not hate watching this movie as much as I'm making it out to be, but this is the stuff that was making me mad, and I'm just ending up, like, yapping about it a lot. I think that's all my criticisms, basically. So overall, it's not a terrible movie, you know? I was looking through Letterboxd reviews earlier. I saw someone say that it was babysitting material, which makes a lot of sense, because what I wrote in my notes was, that it's an Illumination level kids movie, which I definitely still feel is the case. It's like not good. Like, it's not art, but it's not trash either, I guess. It's just kind of there. You know, it exists. It's on Disney Plus. You can watch it whenever you want if you have Disney Plus. Not that I would ever understand why you would want, unless you were babysitting a child. But yeah, if you disconnect it to the OG trilogy, it's not bad. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. But in terms of accuracy, man, is it bad. So, let me start with the accurate stuff, which I believe that I only got like 3 of, but that's okay. Because, you know, for this movie, any accurate thing is good. The first accurate thing that I was like, oh my gosh, that's like really cool, what, they actually got that right, is the soundtrack. I feel like the soundtrack, although you can definitely tell it's made by a different composer than the original 3, the original 3 were composed by Alan Silvestri, which, his soundtracks are really good, but you can, like, I heard a lot of soundtrack references. You probably also saw this in the part where I fast forwarded through and picked out some moments from watching the movie where I was kind of geeking out a little bit because I heard references to the original soundtrack, and it seemed to me like this composer really cared about these original soundtracks and really wanted to do justice to what Alan Silvestri did with the first 3 movies, and I really liked that, because some of the melodies he took from the original and put in there they weren't played a lot in the original movies, but it was things that he heard in the soundtracks and he was like, you know what, that sounds good, I'm gonna put that into my score as well. And upon hearing those, I was like, ah, that's so cool! There were a little bit too many of the Night at the Museum main theme melody, the da-da-da-da-da-da. He had way too many of those, in my opinion. I was just listening to the soundtrack before starting filming this. I really liked what he did with the soundtrack. His name's John Paisano, I don't know how to pronounce it, but something like that, and he did a pretty good job with the score. I appreciate the score. The next thing that is accurate is that they had a dance party at the end of the movie. I liked that. I saw them, I was like, oh my gosh, they're having a dance party in the museum, that's perfect! And I had to write it down, because, bro, the dance party moments at the end of each movie except for the second one. The second one was showing what the night program looked like, but you know, it made me really happy to see the dance party at the end. And then, let's see, the other accurate thing was that everyone turns to dust if they're outside the museum by morning. I thought it was really cool, or really interesting, that that's one of the details they chose to lock in on in terms of mentioning it, because the last two movies of the original trilogy, why did I say second two, what? The last two movies of the original trilogy don't really bring that up. They're just like, we gotta get you guys back to the museum after this crazy adventure thing that was in a completely different spot than the museum. But yeah, I thought it was very cool that they chose to have the detail of everyone turning to dust by the morning. And now for the inaccuracies. I'm going to kind of speed run through some of these and then like talk more about some of the things I feel like should be talked about more, some of the inaccuracies that should be talked about more. So, here are the inaccuracies. Joan of Arc is in here for some reason. They don't explain how she got into the museum at the first place, but there's apparently like some kind of wax statue or something of Joan of Arc. The tablet of Kahmunrah is supposed to be in England, aka no one at the Museum of Natural History should be coming to life at all. Hold on. Kahmunrah's sarcophagus is in the museum. It's still in that same general area. It had always been in the first three, the original trilogy, along with the tablet of Kahmunrah, which they just call the tablet because they don't want to mention Kahmunrah's name for some reason, because they completely forgot to put him in, even though his sarcophagus is right there in the museum. Oh goodness, I'm getting mad. Larry is still working at museums. He eventually goes to become the director of the Tokyo Museum, which is interesting. And he's not a teacher. In the end of the third movie, Dr. McPhee said that after leaving the museum business, Larry went back to college, got his degree, and became a teacher. So that's another inaccuracy, that he's still there and not a teacher. Most of these inaccuracies are really big, too, which is crazy. Nick is still in high school rather than having just graduated or being about to graduate, and his crush is not named Andrea. I feel like that's not a big problem, but his crush is not named Andrea, when in the third movie it was. Nick's mom, Erica, that's her name, is a redhead. For some reason, she was blonde in the first movie when she barely showed up, but still, that's inaccurate. There's a basement for some reason. There was no basement that we knew of in the original trilogy. And they turned to dust too slowly. This is me really nitpicking here, but yeah, I feel like they turned to dust much too slowly. I said it like they were sparkling away. It wasn't like when the Neanderthal looks up at Larry, who's at the top of the stairs, and he just falls into a pile of what looks like ash, almost. Oh, also, I skipped over one. Sacagawea can speak Hun for some reason. She translated what Attila was saying at least twice, and I'm like, excuse me, our Hun translator is supposed to be Kahmunrah, for one thing, and also, like, I'm pretty sure that the people at the museum, by that time, knew Attila well enough that they just understood him, kind of like a Groot situation, you know? But like, bro, come on, Sacagawea, how would Sacagawea know how to speak Hun unless she learned it specifically, but like, then anybody could learn it in the museum, so like, why is she the translator? Why doesn't everybody just understand Attila like they usually did in the last two original trilogy movies? I keep talking about the original trilogy, but this is just, it's not accurate. And then the bigger inaccuracy I'm thinking of, this is the biggest thing, the characterizations and the looks of the characters, but mostly the characterizations. In terms of looks, specifically Attila, Law, and Dexter, looked nothing like the originals. Everybody looked nothing like the original characters. And, like, of course, you don't want to copy completely the looks of the actors, but, like, try a little bit to be like the original. They were just like, you know what? This looks good. This looks like them, right? Now we have the character inaccuracies. Everyone in this movie, in terms of their characterization and things, is, like, even Nick's mom, Erica, is too quirky and silly, especially Teddy and Kahmunrah. They are so silly and over the top, and, like, Teddy does not make the kind of jokes that he used to make that were more subtle and things. He's just like, let's go do this thing now. I'm gonna be funny too. But he's not funny because he's not like his original self. And Kahmunrah is also way too over the top animated. His voice especially, like, he'll be talking like this. I am going to take over the world. He also doesn't have a lisp anymore, which is, like, not that big of a deal, but that was one of the best parts of Kahmunrah in the original Battle of the Smithsonian. I just kind of wrote down a whole list, because the first accuracy-related thing I wrote down was no one looks or acts close to the same. Then I moved an arrow over there to talk about all the mischaracterizations that I saw. Dexter is not as silently antagonistic. Like, literally, he'll just walk up to a person and slap them, and, like, he would only do that to Larry. Don't you understand, people? He would only do that to Larry. And, like, Dexter was mostly nice. He'd also kind of try to sneak up on people to bother them. Like, when he tried to steal Larry's keys. Larry wouldn't even notice most of the time. But in the opening scene, like, Dexter is just going straight up to this new night guard that they were trying to have for the Museum of Natural History. He just goes straight up to him and, like, starts slapping him in the face, pouring water on him or something. I can't even remember, but he, like, does all this stuff without even trying to be sneaky about it, which is, like, not the way he is. As well as this, Nick is insecure and not sassy. I feel like in the third movie, he was definitely a lot more of a sassy kind of teenager that was, like, making remarks, getting a little bit moody on his dad specifically, and just kind of, like, but, like, instead, Nick is just like, I don't know how to do this, Dad. I don't know how to do this, guys. I'm sorry. I'm really bad at everything. Like, that's not the way Nick was. I mean, of course, in the third movie, he did kind of feel like he wasn't good. Like, he felt like he wasn't good enough to go to college, I think it was. Either that or he just wanted to chill. But I think he kind of felt like he did, like, wasn't good enough to go to college. And then, but of course, in the end, he kind of had this character arc, which was more subtle, but definitely visible, I would say, where, hanging out with Lancelot, being friends with Lancelot, and, like, the way Lancelot encouraged him, taught him that he's actually a pretty cool guy, and he can do a lot of cool stuff. And so, like, the fact that they just kind of reversed that so far that that's not even, like, the way Nick was originally before his character arc in the third movie is, like, no. Like, even in the first movie and the second movie, he wasn't an insecure kid. He was, like, he was very happy, and, he wasn't all insecure and stuff. It makes me mad. It makes me mad. And also, this is another thing about Nick's characterization. He keeps being sad and giving up on, like, their mission. Like, they're trying to get to Kahmunrah, stop him from releasing his army and stuff, and they're, like, chasing after him. But when one thing goes wrong, Nick is just like, oh, man, oh, I don't, I'm so sad. I'm sorry, guys, I couldn't help you. And they're like, there is more time for one thing, so lock in and, like, go stop Kahmunrah. Because listen, I feel like we don't know that much about Nick's character in terms of leading the museum people, but I feel like because his dad, Larry, loved all the museum exhibits so much that he'd never give up on them, even if there was no hope to save them, Nick would probably do the same. And, like, I just feel like he would try really hard, even though he kind of knew that there was no hope, just like Larry did, especially in, like, the third movie. He wouldn't be like that. He wouldn't. I mean, I understand it supports your narrative, but make a different narrative, and make sure that the characters are correctly characterized. As well as this, like, Nick barely did anything in the final battle. At first, he just kind of stood there and watched everybody do their things. Like, no! Nick would fight! Did you see him in the Zhang Lu battle? He was ready! He caught Lancelot's little dagger thing as soon as Lancelot tossed it to him. He was ready to fight, even though he had only fought in World of Warcraft. Like he said himself. And it just made me mad. I was like, what the what? So, in terms of accuracy, my overall review would say that it feels like the people who made this movie watched the original trilogy. They mostly forgot about the third one. They forgot about most aspects of the third one. They didn't understand the characters or what made the first three movies work, especially in terms of comedy. What makes me say they mostly forgot about the third one is like... Oh shoot, I forgot actually. I had a whole bunch of things in my head that made me think they forgot about the third one. I feel like mainly like the whole legend of the tablet kind of stuff, and also the introduction of Kahmunrah and Kahmunrah's parents. But like, they just kind of didn't care about the third one. They saw a couple of funny things in the first and second ones, and they were like, okay, this looks good. And okay, one more gripe I have. This movie was produced by Shawn Levy. If you guys don't know who that is, I think that's the director of all three of the original trilogy. Maybe just the first and third one, but I think it was all three. He was the director of all three. He now, like, recently directed Deadpool and Wolverine. I think he produced Kahmunrah Rises Again. And, you probably saw my reaction at the end of the movie when I saw this. I was like, Shawn Levy? He approved of this? Produced by Shawn Levy? What? He approved of this? And I still feel that way, because bro directed 3 Night at the Museum movies, and then was like, yeah, it's okay if nobody is characterized the same, and nobody looks the same, and all of this stuff. I'm like, how? Oh, I just remembered one more accurate thing, though. I thought this was very interesting. When I was looking on Letterboxd, I was looking through the cast, and I saw that Zachary Levi, who they chose to voice Larry instead of anybody that actually sounds like Ben Stiller or is Ben Stiller, he also voiced Law, and I found that to be very interesting, because in Night at the Museum 3, where Law first shows up, the actor of Larry, Ben Stiller, played both Law and Larry, so I thought it was very interesting that Zachary Levi also voiced Law. But everything else, no, so inaccurate. I am so angry right now at how inaccurate this movie was. It couldn't have been that hard. You can watch the first 3 movies and remember the bits of lore that they gave you, like the fact that literally everybody left the Museum of Natural History, or like not everybody left it, but Larry left it. The tablet wasn't there anymore. Like that, you could have built that 4th movie around the fact that, like, I don't know, the exhibits at the Museum of Natural History came back to the London Museum, or the tablet, like, something happened with the tablet that, ended up waking up the people from the Museum of Natural History in New York. Like, it couldn't have been that hard, but for some reason, they just kind of chose to take back everything that happened in the 3rd movie, and just, like, stick with what it was that they came up with that, like, was not accurate. And, you know, the movie isn't bad if you disconnect it from the original trilogy, but if you do connect it, oh my gosh.
And here comes the end of my documentaries.